What's up, everyone, and welcome to the Who's Reality Cooking Podcast. I'm Audrey Johns, and for our very first podcast, I have The Taste pal, Don Pullum, with me. Welcome to the podcast, Don.
Oh, thank you, Audrey. It's been 10 years, hasn't it? I mean, this
I
is
know.
the 10-year anniversary of the Taste Season 2.
I know. I cannot believe it's been 10 years, though we have seen each other since then, but it was maybe like 8 years ago we hung out, right?
Yes, yes. I'm pleased and surprised, but I've had oh, um, 4 or 5 people from Season 2 of the Taste come visit us here in Mason, Texas.
Well, tell us about where you live and why it's such an amazing place to come and visit, why we all want to come and visit you.
Well, Mason, Texas is a very tiny town that my best friend says is not in the middle of nowhere, but it's very close. We are in the wine country of Texas, and we are a small community with an odd mix of people. We have old timers and ranchers of multiple generations, and then we have people who have been here 25 years like me, and I'm still a newcomer because you have to have generational heritage here to be an old timer. And we are expanding. We've got new wineries on the square, and we really have become a wine centric community, which is a lot of fun.
Absolutely. I love it. I remember flying into Austin, and then how long of a drive is it from Austin into?
Yes, Fredericksburg. We
Okay.
went to Fredericksburg and visited some wineries there. It's really an hour at most to get to Fredericksburg, and another hour to get up here to Mason.
Nice, nice. Yeah, I really had a great time visiting you and I can't wait to do it again. And my goal is that this podcast will take off and maybe I can get the whole team down there to see you. I will be having Shayu and Sarah on the program as well. So now all we have to do
Ah,
is get Marcus and we'll all
yes,
be here.
right. I've actually, there was a group of us in 2015 who went to Harlem for the first annual Harlem Eat Up Festival. So we all got to see Marcus and visit with him and eat at his 2 restaurants in Harlem at the time, the Red Rooster and a second one that's not there anymore.
Gotcha. Well, I wish I could have gone. I think I did get the invite, but I was unavailable.
Well,
Um,
you
I
were busy composing books.
I've written 4 books since we've been on the taste.
Wow,
So yeah,
wow,
I've
and
been
they're
busy.
bestsellers. That's exciting.
They are. I'm really, really lucky. I got really lucky and I gained a lot from our time on the taste, but I really want to hear from you and what you've been up to since the taste and what the taste meant to you and all of that. So Don, I know that you really love the background around cooking shows and I would love to hear, how would you describe the taste?
Yeah, the taste. In hindsight, I was really surprised that it was an leading edge programming in cooking competitions, and and the word reality is a really interesting word to use in these type of competitions, as not just simply food competitions, but any kind of competition. The way I describe reality TV is in 1921, there was this guy named Luigi Pirandello who was a playwright. And he was one of the early playwrights to write during a period called Theater of the Absurd, which already tells you a little bit about how, how I feel about reality shows. He uh, took 6 characters, and the play is called Six Characters in Search of an Author. And he took 6 characters, and the characters are simply named father, mother, daughter-in-law, son, boy, and girl. and they go walk into a theater that's has a play in rehearsal, and they approach the director and they say, we we're characters and we're looking for an author. Would you help us and take our stories and create a play? And they do, uh, and it really questions what is art, what is reality, what is fiction, and all of those questions are important questions to be asked about reality television. So
Yes.
here we were, um, there were 35 contestants to be taken down to 16, and there were thousands even before then. Um, but the producer and director did not have a script. We were there and we were indeed characters, because they didn't, uh, as producers, when through the edit process, they didn't present, our full blown lives or anything of that nature. They just created characters uh, on the set. So they put it in a competition, and they had background stories, which they were interested in. The taste in particular was interested in background stories. So they took our background stories, which became an integral part of the first episode. Um, and then as we cooked and interacted with the judges and interacted with each other, all of a sudden they started seeing storylines and started developing those storylines. So here I was, at the time, a 56-year-old guy, and I knew going in I was not going to win this thing. The My best hope was I was there long enough to talk about Texas wine, because I saw this as wonderful advertising for the Texas wine industry. And
Absolutely.
I was on a committee that reported to the ag commissioner in Texas, uh, and suggesting how we spend $4 million every 2 years on the industry, and marketing and promotion was part of it. And I thought, well, I contributed my allotment this year. I got to speak in front of, that first episode had 4.9 million viewers,
Wow.
which,
4.9 million people saw us on that.
yes, I know. And I got to
Oh,
walk out on the set with a glass of wine and tell people I'm a Texas winemaker, which
see,
I thought was exciting.
I didn't realize you walked out with wine. And for anyone watching and listening, we kind of exchanged some texts before we did this podcast, but I tried to not talk too much to Don just so that this would all be like a true reunion. And I did tell you I was going to watch all the episodes, but they're not available for free streaming anywhere. So I was off the hook. So I didn't realize you got to walk out there with wine. Was that something you asked to do, or was that something the producers kind of handed you and said, go for it?
That was something I did.
Good.
There was in the pantry, which was a well-stocked pantry, they had alcohol and wines, and there was a Sauvignon Blanc in there. And I thought, well, I'm going to walk out. I'm a winemaker and from Texas. I'm going to walk out. When I walked out, Bourdain looked at me and said, "First, the question is, what are you drinking?" So that's extraordinary advertising for the Texas wine industry. I was happy about that. 4.9 million people for the Taste season 2, when the Taste season 2 was competing against the Winter Olympics. They were competing against the Big Bang Theory, which consistently has 11 million viewers. And the
Wow.
final episode of the Taste, we were still in the top 10 viewership, for the finale, and we it was 3.2 million people still watching us, which was pretty exciting. Um,
Wow.
so the Taste was really the first food competition to be broadcast on a major broadcast network, ABC, CBS, NBC. Of course, there was Fox with fewer viewers, but The Taste was the first 2 hour shows being broadcast on major network television. This was a big experiment. It was an expensive show. If you remember, we were um, in Studio City a week before production started, and we were there a week before simply because they were still striking the set from The Voice before us, and that's why the delay was there. The Voice had not yet struck their set, and have time to build out the Taste set, which was pretty extensive, a huge amount of lighting. Were you surprised by the lighting?
I was not just surprised by the lighting, but by all of the cameras, and not just the insane amount of cameras circling around you at any given moment, but all the cameras above.
Yes, and
And
and managed with robotics.
yeah,
Um, it
yeah,
was pretty amazing, and everybody was mic'd up, and you were mic'd for the entire day, so you
yes.
knew they were listening to everything. So I would suspect that the story producers reviewed everything at the end of the day to see if they could use some aspect of our conversations to continue to develop the storyline.
Oh, I agree. In fact, I have an example I talked about on my other podcast, on the Lose Weight by Eating podcast, where I talked about how midday they had taken some audio and approached me with it. So I think they were listening to it
Ooh,
in real
yeah.
time.
Oh, wow.
And then definitely when we did the confessionals at the end of the day, you would sit there and you're answering questions, and you'd see anybody watching on YouTube, you would see the producer kind of put their finger to their ear listening to what they were being told, and then ask you a question about something that you had said earlier in the day, or someone else had said earlier in the day. So I think they
Yes.
were, maybe there was maybe an hour long delay, but I think they were listening to it in real time, which
Well,
is
that
smart.
makes perfect sense. If you're real time attempting to put these characters together and write their story, I thought it was I thought it was an amazing process. I was enthralled with the process. Even the judges, Bourdain, Nigella, and Marcus Samuelson, and Ludo Lefebvre, uh, had earpieces,
Yeah,
and while they were talking to us, they were listening to direction via their earpieces, and you could tell because all of a sudden their conversation with us would change, and it would
absolutely.
be quite an immediate change. The interesting thing about reality TV is we actually were directed, and the method used for directing us was interviews and interview process, because we were in front of the camera cooking for what, 2 hours a day,
Yeah,
um, um, 2 hours a day, and the rest of the time was spent either waiting
waiting.
on something or being interviewed. And I kind of got the idea, oh, they've stopped interviewing, my character's going to get killed off.
Really?
Yes, yes, it was like, all right, the interviews are not happening. So they're gonna, get rid of my character. Fortunately, they didn't kill my character. Uh,
Yes, because you're
so I
still
got
here
to
with
come
us,
back
thank
for the
goodness.
finale.
Wow. So what do you feel like your character was that they gave you?
Yeah, the character they gave me was 9 months prior to competing on the taste. My wife Diana had passed over from ALS, which is a terrible, debilitating disease.
Yeah.
Something you know about. Uh,
Yeah.
yeah, and I think that's probably one of the things that made me like you very early on, before we really knew one another.
Oh,
And you
Dawn.
you didn't tell anyone about your medical condition, but I could see it because I
Yeah.
had lived with a neurological condition for several years, and I was quite empathetic to you
But
when we first met. But anyway, the character they created for me was a man who had lost his wife. They liked the winemaker aspect because it was unique, and then put it in Texas, and it's exceptionally unique.
absolutely.
And but it was, there was a sadness about my character, and quite frankly, I didn't realize that I was projecting that sadness until I saw their edit,
Yeah.
and watched the show, and I thought, oh, I guess I was pretty sad. And it was a sad moment in my life, and I didn't realize how bad it was uh,
Yeah.
until I watched myself.
And how did was that helpful watching yourself? Was it kind of therapeutic or was it difficult?
No, I think I absolutely agree that it was therapeutic for me. But not only that, but one of the reasons I auditioned uh, was I was looking for an adventure, uh, an interruption to my life. And this presented itself, and I thought, well, I'll be focused on this for several months, and um, uh, that will get me away from the reality of having lost Diana. And so, and that did happen. I was focused on that, and for about 6 months afterwards, people were still recognizing me, and that short amount of fame that you get um, was um, was really nice. Plus, I wasn't ready for social media at the airing of this show. How about you?
I was in some ways, and in some ways I was not. I already had a decent following on Facebook.
Yeah, yeah,
I would say
more than
maybe 100,000 at the time.
yeah,
Does that
yeah.
sound right? Um, Twitter was new. I was not ready for the nastiness from Twitter. Oh my
Oh,
goodness.
oh,
People are just, there's something about Twitter or X or whatever you want to call it now, that people just, they really feel like they can just be as cruel as possible. And I'm sure, I hope people were kinder to you, but to people like me and to Cassie, I know we got a lot of negative feedback. And I don't think that Instagram was a thing yet, or if it was, I certainly
no,
wasn't on
it
it.
wasn't. It wasn't. And the social media platform formerly known as Twitter uh, um, was there, and I didn't even have a Twitter account. I had a Facebook account. My high school friends and college friends and industry people were on my Facebook account. But after the first episode, there were all these friend requests, and I was simply not prepared for it. So I set up a business Facebook account called Don Pullum Winemaker, and referred everybody else to that one, so that I could keep a handle on all this stuff. Most of the people who responded for me were really empathetic, sympathetic. Um, Lots of folks who had family members with ALS were contacting me and telling me their stories. Um, and sharing their stories, which was helpful at the time. And but I did get a couple of stalkers, um, which was really an odd situation to be in. Uh,
Oh, tell us more about that.
well,
If you feel
one
comfortable.
one was just an internet stalking, and it was on Facebook, and it was a woman, an age-appropriate woman in Houston, who and I had thought to myself, well, I want to respond to everybody if they're if they were interested enough in sending me, uh, reaching out to me, I want to respond. So I responded and said, thanks for your well wishes and that sort of thing. And then the second response from her was, uh, well, I'm a grandmother in Houston. Even though I have 7 grandchildren, my breasts are still fabulous. and 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 sort of in that vein. And so I thought maybe I should look at these accounts before I, I respond. So I took a look at this account, and it was all sadomasochism and lots of leather, and it was like,
Oh my god.
yeah, well, this might suit some people, but it wasn't for me.
Oh my
So
god.
so that happened. Then I got old school things. I got letters, and my favorite letter was an uh, old style, uh, flowery print, um, stationery and envelope, and it had been perfumed.
Oh my.
and and I opened it and I read it, and it was really intimate, but not over the top. And I thought, well, this isn't so bad, and it's old school. That's kind of nice. And then I looked at the return address, and the return address was a penitentiary in Florida.
Oh my god.
so so it's really amazing. We had airtime. What it was, granted, it was in front of millions of people, but our airtime for the whole show, we may have gotten our 15 minutes of fame each, and that's it.
Yeah.
And and they didn't. Nobody knew me. They knew the character, the sympathetic character that the taste had created for me. Um, and I guess another one was a woman had watched the taste, and the story on the first episode, really touched her heart, and she was about 15 years younger than me, and um, had had just finished a really nasty divorce, and I didn't have my contact information readily available to anybody because I realized I'm not prepared for this. So she called one of the wineries that I consulted with, and spent an hour visiting with the owner of the winery. And the owners of this winery are very gregarious and welcoming people. And they said, sure, why don't you come down and
Oh
visit?
my.
And I was like, God, I wish you had mentioned this to me before you made the invitation.
Oh no. Oh
so,
no.
so she flew down and spent 2 weeks with us. There was no love connection, and you could tell she was still struggling with a divorce, or the end of the divorce, and trying to figure out what she wanted to do. And after spending a couple of weeks down here, she returned to Manhattan, and shortly after enrolled in the CIA, Culinary Institute of America,
Wow.
focused and received her degree, and is now a chef. So even though she didn't find the connection she may have been looking for, I think we were probably on her path to give her some guidance on how to get there.
That's
Um,
amazing. That's amazing. I would
yeah.
love for her to do a reality cooking show. Just kind of full circle
Yes.
would be. So if you're listening, try out.
Try out.
Wow, wow. That's just it's so interesting how your character that they built for you, it seemed to live on for quite a while after in your personal life.
Yes.
That's
Yes.
really cool.
I have a niece that I like a lot, and she, in her generation, people tend to stick in groups and have developed groups early on that stay together throughout their lives. and and all of a sudden I am getting invited to parties of her generation, mind you, and but always with someone age appropriate who is a divorced mom of one of the
Oh,
friends. so so they were going to fix me up. It was like, no, we can't let Uncle Don be sad. We're going to fix him up.
oh man, that is very sweet.
Well, yeah.
So since you're definitely at least in the way I see it is you were definitely the ladies' man, coming out of the taste. So I do have to ask, are you comfortable sharing? Are you currently in a relationship? Or are you just enjoying bachelorhood?
I, I'm enjoying bachelorhood. I
Good for
was,
you.
I met people, women, and I always, first I got to get over comparing everybody to Diana
Of course.
and the relationship I had with Diana, which they have no idea what it was. But Dinah and I were high school sweethearts. We got married when I was in college, and we were together for 41 years 41 years. And the only time she and I weren't together was, I guess, when I was a toddler and and a little kid. But from high school on, we were together. So it's hard to think about certainly replacing that kind of relationship. And eventually, and this took about 4 years, I said to myself, I'm okay alone. I don't need a relationship. And my relationships now are good friends and acquaintances, and that's how I spend my time. But on the romantic front, I don't think it's going to be there.
Okay, well, I do have to ask one more romantic front question, and then we can definitely move on. So
Okay.
there was a rumor that you asked Nigella out while we were on the show. So is there any truth to that? And then I swear we can move on.
All right, all right. Uh, Nigella Lawson. Um, during the application phase, when send in a video of yourself, I thought to myself, well, I knew they were going to be creating characters, and I thought, well, we can put a good storyline in here, and I'll flirt with Nigella Lawson. Um, and maybe they'll pick that up and keep it as a storyline, and I'll end up making it through another episode.
Yeah.
so so in my audition tape, I used the word for Nigella. I remember saying, Nigella, I'd really like to woo you. And I used the word woo in particular because it's a very British word. It's an old word. And I thought, well, maybe they'll pick up on that and carry it through. And and so they did, obviously, because there were a couple of associate producers in their interviews would ask me, "How is the wooing going?" And it was like, "Nah, there's no wooing going on here. I'm knee deep in food product and processing, and there's no time for this." So no, I didn't. On the when I got kicked off, I did shake Nigella's hand and said if she ever found herself in Texas, we should share a bottle of wine and have a meal.
I love that.
And it was funny because Ludo was sitting right next to her, and Ludo shook my hand. He says, "I like your style, man."
Nice,
Yeah.
smooth. Oh, all right. Well, I feel like I've embarrassed you enough on that topic, Dawn.
Yeah.
Um, So, what I did want to ask, I know we are in contact, and I know that you were in contact with Shayu from our team. Is there anyone else from the show or from the back end of the show that you're still in contact with?
Yes, it's really funny. Is early on, before the filming ever started, I was having dinner by myself at the Hilton there where we were staying, and um, Lisa Ann Marchica Marchese, who on this show got all of 2 seconds of making a sad face. But she went on to perform in several well, a couple of more reality TV shows. And you're going to have Lisa Ann on, aren't you?
I am. I am. I get to
Oh,
interview
great.
her next week. I'm so excited to reconnect with her because we were back to back when we went to try out. So we
Right.
rode the bus home together and we rode the bus there together and we stood waiting for our turn to. In fact, we may have actually cooked at exactly the same time, but just in
Wow.
different spots.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, I love
So
Lisa. She's
so
great.
Lisa Ann Marchica Marchese and Raina, and Angie Tyler, who's from Austin, who didn't make a team, but she had some good airtime early on. They all came out to Mason during our rodeo days, and Raina had been to a rodeo in Venezuela before, and of course Angie, being a Texan, has been to a rodeo, but Lisa Ann had never been to a rodeo.
Jersey
And
Girl at a rodeo. Man, you
yeah,
have to film that.
New Jersey girl at a rodeo,
I
and
love
that was a lot
it.
of fun. So those guys came. Shayu was a happy coincidence. There's a resort close to Mason, about 45 minutes away, called Horseshoe Bay, and Shayu was scheduled as a celebrity chef there for a wine and food event. And I was there because I was pouring wine for one of the wineries that I work for. And we saw each other, and I thought, wow, this is pretty impressive. I really
That's
appreciate it.
cool.
And he stayed an extra day and came out to Pontotoc Vineyard. And a friend of mine had shot some wild hogs rather, and had a small one that he gave to me. So I had butchered it, and I took those from the freezer and took them out to Shea and said, "Here, cook this." Uh, and Shea has a line of blended spices, and he cooked it up, and we had a great time there as well.
Oh, that's so great. That's so, so great. Um, did you happen to keep your apron? Did you get anything from the show?
Oh
Ah,
no! I heard that. I mean, I was so surprised at that. Um, the the post participation element of the show was disappointing.
agreed.
Uh, I fully anticipated that I'd at least get an autographed book, at a cookbook, and I'd be able to keep my apron, but none of that was there and ready. Maybe they thought they'd have another Don on the show. Uh, Less likely to have another Audrey though.
Yeah, I didn't get mine either. It was very
Yeah,
strange that because for anyone who either didn't watch or didn't realize, these were, sewn on. Our names were not just some kind of patch that you could cover up with something
yeah,
else. These,
yes.
I assume they ended up in a dumpster somewhere, which is heartbreaking because I would have loved to have had it. Maybe
Oh,
not the
come
little
on,
red
think
star that was on it, but I would
think
have loved.
bigger. They were sent to the Smithsonian.
Oh gosh. I love
so
it.
but the Taste is a franchise. It wasn't just the Taste USA, so to speak. There's a company called Red Arrow Entertainment, which is a Canadian company, and they have distribution rights. But they also have the rights for the franchise, which means other broadcast companies in other countries can produce the Taste format show. So even right now, I remember seeing the British show, which was broadcast in the U.S. I saw the Chinese show.
Wow.
Yes, yes, and now in its sixth season is a Brazilian, The Taste, and what is it? There was one more. Um,
Germany, I think.
Germany
Yeah.
in its 13th season.
So
Um,
they're the ones who we need to go after the aprons.
yes, right, right. Maybe our aprons are on a German.
Oh man, yeah, I heard about the Germany one, but I'm really surprised about all of the other versions of the tastes that are out there, and I really hope that Nigella and Anthony's child are getting their royalties from it. I'm sure they are, but
Yes, yes.
wow, that
I
is so
think one of
neat.
the issues for the Taste USA, it was an expensive show.
Yes.
Studio City, um, location for production. You had four uh, well-named chefs that were. I had read that Nigella Lawson was getting $4 million per season,
Wow.
and I would think Bourdain would have gotten the same amount, and Ludo and Malarkey and Marcus would have gotten something similar to that. So just the hosting talent is expensive. Of course, we weren't expensive.
No,
Uh,
we were free labor.
we were we were free labor. They had to feed us and put us up in a hotel and drive us around. Were you surprised at how closely we were monitored?
Oh man, I yesterday I recorded. And I did this for the other podcast because I really want to try to keep this show as much for you guys and not make it about me. Obviously, we're going to chat
Oh,
because
we're going to
we're
have to. Yeah.
going to have to. We have a history. But I was talking about how initially I think we were given either a 2 or a 3 hour sequester, and then someone went missing and they knocked it down to 1 hour, and it was you can't. I remember you and we went and got a beer over at City Walk
Right.
at some brewery, and we wanted to eat, I think, but we didn't have time to because 1 hour, when you think about getting all the way over there and getting all the way back, that's not even enough time to have a meal off grounds. And
Right,
we
unless
were
you get a hot dog and eat it on the bus or the transportation.
exactly, exactly,
Um,
yeah.
it was a surprise. It was, I, but I understand, but they didn't want us talking to anybody or having anybody, invade and see if they could get a scoop about the second season of The Taste. Um,
Yeah, and I know they were worried about people who lived in Los Angeles going home and practicing. They wanted to keep it. I remembered that aspect as well, was you can't go home and practice because that would be giving you a one up on the contestants like you and I who couldn't go home for a couple of
right,
hours and practice.
right.
So,
Um, Well, yeah,
yeah.
but then you had one person who had hot plates in her her
Yes.
room, and she
Yes.
cooked all the time.
I know.
It's
I know.
like
Yes,
I
I
want to
definitely
eat. I
remember
want to
that.
eat at your place because
Everyone
the
wanted to eat at
food
her
was
place.
terrible at the
Oh,
taste. Lunch, well, not the food, lunches. There was a food wagon that came in, a food truck that came in for breakfast, and the breakfasts were really tasty and wonderful.
yes.
But boy, that lunch was potato chips and candy bars and um, bologna
Yeah.
sandwiches. It wasn't
Yeah,
exciting.
they had potentially some of the biggest chefs and us home cooks that,
Yes,
would
that's right.
eventually go off with our own career, and they were just feeding us garbage. And I remember at one point I just got a scoop of ice cream and that's what I ate for lunch. I'm like, well, it's enough calories, I guess. But the
Yes,
food was so repulsive that it was like, well, I can see that's still in the ice cream maker, so I know at least that's fresh.
right,
But
right.
yeah.
And then when you're on set and you're cooking in the competition, you think, I'm going to cook a little extra and sneak it away
Yep.
because you know I. I felt comfortable with eating the food I cooked, but everything else was challenging.
It was. And then the food at the Hilton, the restaurant was wonderful, but very expensive. But the food at the
Yes.
bar was just bad. It was
Yeah.
bad. So
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
for to have so many foodies in one place, we were going to notice when the food was bad.
Yes,
So
of course. Of
yeah.
course.
Well, do you have any of your fondest memories from the show? Any stories to tell?
There were characters that I was upset left so early. You and we left on the third episode.
Yes. Fourth
Um,
actually, but I think we're not counting the first the am I counting them wrong? Again, I wasn't able to
well,
rewatch
yeah,
them.
yeah. The first episode was the
The
audition part
tryouts. Yeah.
when we were all auditioning. I forget the name of the episode, but second, I think we were out on the third episode. We came back for the finale, so we were actually on 4 episodes.
Okay.
But I was so surprised that Jay um, was off so early because he was a magnificent character.
Absolutely. Jay was
Um,
so much fun.
Yeah, and my favorite line, I'm glad they included it in the edit from Jay was, I tried to pray away the gay, I tried to eat away the gay.
Oh,
And, you hear that, you want to hear more of that guy's story.
yeah. Yeah. Oh,
Um,
I just adore Jay. I'm trying to get him to come on the show as well. We've been talking.
oh, I hope so. I hope so.
Yeah.
And Raina was just, she was out there and she was funny and confrontational.
Yes.
She was a good character.
She was a great character. She was a great character.
So I was surprised that those characters didn't last longer, and I mean, they were the first two to leave,
I know.
which really surprised me. Of
It
course, there
surprised me
was
as well.
there was a friend of mine was on a reality television show, and he played um, he played the judge, and the reality show was called My Big Fat Obnoxious Boss,
Huh.
and the theme of that show was there was a bunch of young people who were attempting to get a job at a venture capital firm, and they would go and compete, and they would come back to a boardroom, and my friend would say, okay, I've got to go talk to the chairman. And he goes into another room and he comes back out and he sends someone packet. And it never seemed like there was rhyme or reason for the people he was sending packing, kind of
Okay.
like Jay, you
Yeah.
know. And at the very last episode, he says to the two people standing, all right, I got to go talk to the chairman. And he goes back, and the chairman is a monkey rolling a roulette wheel.
Oh my God.
That's the ultimate of theater of the absurd and creating characters
Oh
and
my God.
realizing it didn't matter. It
No,
didn't matter. Of course, that only had one season because once you knew it was a
a monkey. It was, yeah.
monkey, yeah, you're not going to get any more
What was it
character.
going to be next? Like a giraffe or
Oh yeah, right. Yes, we'll put a giraffe in and a porpoise because porpoises are really smart.
that would have been great. They really missed an opportunity.
Yeah, yeah, they did.
Oh
So
man.
I would I do it again? I would have 8 years ago, but not now. It's been there, done that. Had a fabulous experience. Was really pleased. It cropped up in my life at a good time for me. Um, but my notoriety for that lasted very shortly. But my notoriety as a winemaker continued. I made a wine in 2014 vintage, and in 2016 it got a double gold medal from the San Francisco International Wine Competition.
Wow,
So
congratulations.
yeah, that's that's for winemakers. That's like getting an Oscar.
Yeah,
So
absolutely.
I, I'm just was excited to think that these judges would have a reveal that said, "Oh, this wine came from Mason, Texas." It's like, what? It's Texas
Wow.
wine?
That's so great. That's so, so great because great wine can really be made in all different areas of the world. And at that
Yeah.
point, it was all very much, what, France and then Northern California, right?
Yes, right, right, exactly. We are in this area. Our soils are called the Hickory Sands, and it's very unique to Mason County and McCullough County, just north. And we are getting, we're in the process of receiving from the feds an AVA designation, which is American Viticultural Area, which designates that this area is particularly unique in its topography and soils and geology and geography that create a specific style of wine. And when that happens, I think we're going to get a lot more attention. I think the AVA that everyone knows in the U.S. is the Napa Valley.
Yeah.
And so we're going to be right up there with it was like I think there are 469 AVAs in the US, so we're
Wow.
going to be there as well. I'm excited about that.
That's so great. That's congratulations, Don. I'm so
Yeah,
happy for you.
thank
I
you,
I
thank
have
you.
gotten to try your wine and it is amazing. And when I came on the taste, I was actually writing food and wine
Yes,
articles for
yes,
Paso
you were.
Robles for the magazines and the local newspapers up there. So I did have to stop when after I got off the taste, but yeah, you've got some
Yeah,
great wine there.
you are the person from season 2 who has use the taste as a jumping board for your career more so than anyone else. Um, I mean,
Thank
you
you.
really have done that, and most of us went back to what we were doing before. Me, I came back to being a winemaker, and I had a good, strong identity as a winemaker in Texas. Um, and I had worked diligently to create that identity and continued on. And you immediately, your publisher is
HarperCollins. Yeah.
Harper Collins, and I mean that's a big time publisher.
Yeah.
You, I can't tell you how much I'm impressed with all your efforts afterwards.
Well,
Uh,
thank you.
and
Hopefully
your
this
character was they kind of made they kind of made an effort to create an obnoxious character for you.
They did. They did. I hated that. I would be saying, the producer, we each had our own producer that would ask us, did we each have our own producer or was it each team had our own
Each
producer?
team had its
Okay.
own producer. We had
The gal from
oh
Top Chef, right? Was
Shawn Michaels
Oh, that's right,
as
Sean.
our producer. Beard.
Yes.
Sean is a supervising producer for the Travel Channel now, and he travels all over the world.
We're
Um,
friends on Facebook. Sean
Yeah,
is
yeah. I mean,
great.
it's really, really cool. So he was our producer, and the producers and the story producers, and I'm sure director would powwow and say, "These are the questions we want you to ask." Like
Yeah.
for me, it was, "What do you think Diana would think?"
Oh, they were trying to make you cry.
Oh, it was very
Ugh,
important. They wanted to make me cry. And I was like, now I don't want to be the crying winemaker from Texas.
I know.
How do I manage this? Because I would imagine all of us were not fully hooked into the process. And we were all thinking, I got to go home after this. And a, uh, a group of 5 million people in the US, which, granted is a small group, but still big, um, would know me in one particular way,
Yeah.
um, for me, they were very kind to my character. They took care to uh, not not make me look like a sniveling man, which would have been awful. And I made
Yes.
an effort to not give that character to them.
Yeah, the character, well, first of all, they would ask me questions and they would say, "Well, have you ever made this on your website or have you ever made this on social media?" And I'd be like, "Yeah, my readers loved this about it." And they'd say, "No, no, we want you to use the word fans."
Yes, fans.
Which I mean, at best, I'm like a G level celebrity. I am so far down the rung. I mean, I make it to work in the same industry as the big names and meet them from time to time. But when you work with somebody like Anthony Bourdain or Rachel Ray, you know you are just you're nothing. And
Yeah.
that's okay. I don't want to be recognizable. But using the word fan just felt so phony. And then they would turn it around and make fun of me for it. And that was really rough. But what I found was really difficult was in our confessionals, they would tell me, "Oh, so and so is saying this about you. What do you have to say about their cooking?" Or so and so is saying this about you. What do you say about their cooking? They were trying to, and I know they did this with Sarah because we had a moment about it, a good one.
Yeah.
They were trying to get us to shit talk about each other. Were you ever part of that, or was your character just outside of that drama they were trying to
It
create?
was always outside of that, except for my exit interview,
Mm,
which would have been posted on the internet. And they said, or they asked, there are these people who are left. Who do you think should not be there?
ew.
And I didn't answer because
Yeah.
they all should be there because you created their characters, and these are the people you want to be there.
Yeah, and you get to know all of these people, and maybe even the ones you're not friends with, they're out there, they're putting themselves out there, and you care. And it's I refused to shit talk anyone. And I remember one night I heard a knock on my door and I opened it, just assuming they were giving us a call sheet or something. And Sarah was crying and she's like, "I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry." I'm like, "Why are you so sorry?" They had essentially held her for so long that they got something out of her that, she said something about me that was irking her, which was probably accurate. She's dealing with somebody who's only been cooking for 2 years. And it was interesting how I know they did that with several of us. I'm glad you were, for the most part, not part of that because your character was so lovable, and I think that's why you're in contact with so many people. We all love you. Just
Well,
if you haven't heard that from any of us, there isn't a single person I've talked to from the Taste who doesn't say that Don was the best. Don was so much fun. We
oh,
just loved Don.
oh.
So just know that was all very, very genuine. But yeah, they definitely tried to create drama, which makes for great
Right.
television. But one question I had for you was, I always tell people, for me, reality is reality shows are for the most part bullshit. But that clicking clock, wow, see,
Yeah.
we've been having a hard time with the words because it's so traumatic. That clock was real. How much of it was real? How much of it was maybe not staged, but pushed into character building, do you think?
I let me tell you, after you had left, you had the cooking station in front of my cooking station,
Right.
right? So we were uh, coming in. That was the team challenge, and we were coming for the individual challenge. And I came in to my cooking station and opened up the fridge, and there was no food in it. And I went to the pantry to get things that I could start cooking, and I
Yeah.
started cooking. And then Sean and the stage director came up to me and said, "Oh, we're so sorry. We want you in Audrey Station up front. So, the cameras can get you and that kind of
Yeah.
thing." And it was like, well, my God, I'm like 8 minutes into this. I'm going to be 8 minutes shy.
Oh,
I have to get the pans reheated. And all this is going through my head. And I'm thinking, oh, they did this on purpose.
yeah.
And it would make sense that they would do it on purpose. They created a challenge for me. Uh, and so I moved up there and found all the proteins which were in your fridge, which, by the way, was not working. You remember your fridge wasn't working.
I forgot about that.
And when I went up there, uh, the the proteins in the fridge weren't warm. They
But they
were
weren't cold.
cool, but they weren't cold. And it was
Oh
like,
gosh.
am I going to feed this to people? And I
Mm.
decided, yes. Yes, I am. They did this to me. They're going to have to eat
Fuck
it.
them.
That's exactly right. You're going to send me home. I can tell you're doing things like this. So you're going to have to eat this.
Oh man.
So I cooked it and got sent home.
What did you
But
cook for that
no,
last?
paella.
Oh,
Uh,
that's your signature.
yeah, I mean, I had when I came back to Texas and San Antonio for the past 5 years. Then there was an annual paella competition called the Paella Challenge, which brought celebrity chefs in and local chefs and high school kids because it was to fund um, programs for the high school kids to cook with. Um, and along with the Culinary Institute of America in San Antonio. So I showed up to that, and I was one of the celebrity chefs at that March after the taste in February, cooking paella. I got lots of compliments about my paella. Then
Yeah.
I felt okay. I got a little redemption here.
Good. Oh man.
but
Yeah,
but on the show that I left with, it was paella, and I really just tried to pile too many things onto one spoon.
gotcha.
And paella, you can use all kinds of different proteins um, and vegetables, and different from region to region of Spain. And I tried to put it all in one, so it didn't turn out so well.
Ugh,
Um, However, it was a lot of fun to cook at the Paella Challenge in San Antonio because there was a large crowd. It was, oh, that's Don from the Taste.
wow.
Oh, wait, he got cooked off for cooking this paella.
Then
I
everyone
can't
wanted to
wait for
try
that.
it.
Everybody wanted to taste it. Of
Oh man.
course,
Wow.
I had an up there. Two of the three judges judging the competition I knew personally from the wine industry, because the wine industry, overlaps with the food industry
Yeah.
on a regular basis. And so when I walked in to hand my food to the judges, they said, "Don, what are you doing here?" I didn't know you cooked. Yeah, I
Oh wow.
do.
You're like,
And
hello,
if
I was
I
on the
brought wine,
taste.
I'd have brought you some wine.
Very cool. Well, I did want to ask, do you have, if anyone is listening and they want to try out for one of these shows, do you have any advice for them?
Um, the application process has changed a little bit. We did Skype interviews, I think,
I
back
went to a live
way back
casting
then.
call.
Oh, I did a Skype interview.
Oh, wow. Okay.
They were accommodating for me. I guess they liked my backstory quite a lot because uh, I sent them photos of food that I had prepared. I didn't photograph my food much before the taste, but post taste, I photograph everything. There's every little morsel of food that goes in my mouth gets photographed
I
and
love it.
posted on Facebook. So I really pay attention to that interview process or if they have you send in an audition tape, pay close attention to make yourself unique and think of yourself as a character. Why
Love that.
is this character more interesting than other characters? If you've had a pretty normal life and find something exciting about your life. And one thing that the directors and casting agents um, really emphasized was high energy. When you present yourself on medium or social medium or television or whatever, you really have to exaggerate your energy.
Right.
Um, your regular speaking voice, your calm demeanor, that's not what they're looking for. They're looking for someone who's they're looking for Raina Bazi.
Yeah. Raina is great. I'm gonna have to get her on this show. It'll end up being like a 3-hour interview,
Yeah, I
but
think so. And
oh,
she's
she's
great. And it was so much fun when they came to Mason for the rodeo. Uh, and and I had bought shirts for them. Uh,
and I will post those. I have the photo. I will definitely post the photo.
yes. And we showed up, and I got some really great video of everybody having fun. Lisa and Marchica Marchese was just appalled at all the little kids who were grabbing hold of sheep and riding them to see which kid was going to be the last one to hold on. That's barbaric. I can't believe they're doing that. That's absolutely wrong.
Oh my gosh.
And that's a common thing to do at rodeos in Texas.
Oh, totally. They did that at the fair every year in Paso Robles.
Yes, yes.
I
Oh,
never
by
let
the
my kid
way,
do it though.
what happened to your goat? Did you eat it?
Oh, Lucy. No, I did not eat her. So funny thing about Lucy was I never asked for her. She just showed up. My
Oh.
ex-husband just brought her home and said, "Here, take care of this." And she's still being bottle fed and it was okay. You know, I had house trained her and all of that and she was kind of like having a dog. And then I
Yeah.
went away for the taste and it was too much for him to handle a child and a goat. I get it. I totally get it. I'm not shit talking my ex on this. So he brought her back. He brought Lucy back to the farm that he had purchased her from. And when I came back from the taste, we were gone for what, 2 months maybe for the filming? The original,
Yeah,
maybe a little
yeah,
bit
off and
less.
on because I had returned to
Okay.
Texas, and then I got a phone call saying we've decided to bring everybody back for the finale.
Right, right.
So I'm off on my way back.
Well, I got Lucy back and she was no longer potty trained. And she started headbutting my child
Oh,
and
oh,
Lucy now lives at, and I know this sounds like I euthanized her. I did not, but she lives at Happy Acres Goat Farm in Paso Robles, California. I swear, look it up. It might be Templeton, but it is there, and it is not. She did not go over the rainbow. She's a very
no,
happy goat now.
no, that's a front.
Oh man, I swear, look it up.
Happy Acres Goat Farm. They got pretty photos and videos of happy goats, and
Oh.
really they're getting slaughtered.
Oh yeah, that was interesting. I'm definitely not. I think that might have gotten me on the show. The goat and the tears, the goat and the tears about my
Your
past mother.
mom,
I think
sure.
got me on the show. But yeah, Lucy's elsewhere now.
Yeah, so look for good stories for anybody who is applying. Look for good stories in your life, and everybody has some kind of good story, and you may think it's not attractive or particularly important, or it may become such a part of your life that you don't think that this would be interesting to someone else. Find a good story. If you're cooking, you got to be a decent cook, and you need to have different skills for different shows. Like Lisa and Marchika Marchese went on MasterChef for 7 seasons. I I thought, oh, good for you. That's a tough competition on the
Yeah.
cooking basis. You've got to be concerned about plating. You're asked to recreate chefs' dishes exactly as they've cooked them and plated them. That on a cooking basis is a tough competition. And she made it for 7 episodes, and then she tried to, oh, what's the name of the chef who was the host
Ramsey?
of that? Ramsay, Gordon
Gordon
Ramsay.
Ramsay?
She nearly lit his eyebrows on fire. And she was gone after that.
Yeah.
I thought that was so fabulous. That was good TV.
That was great TV. And I talked to Lisa after it, and she was like, "What did he expect yelling at an Italian woman?" I'm like, "Hell yeah."
Yes, that's exactly right.
I mean, that wasn't what it wasn't on purpose, and I know that, but she's hilarious. I can't wait to have her on this podcast.
Yeah, yeah, she is a huge amount of fun.
Yeah,
Uh,
she is. She is. Well, is there anything that you're working on right now? Any social
oh,
media we should be
sure, sure.
watching?
Um, I retired from winemaking 3 years ago.
Okay.
So all the wine that I've ever made has either been stored in individuals' wine cellars or drunk up because there's nothing that I made that's available for purchase anymore, which
Okay.
is kind of sad. It's like, oh man, nobody's going to drink the wine anymore and say, ah, Don did this.
Oh,
Um, so it was a challenge because I had spent 25 years um, where my identity was winemaking
right.
and a winemaker, and after that, my identity just poof went away. So I had to re-identify myself, and so now I am writing a novel because I have an undergraduate degree in English and American literature, and we lit people all want to write the next great American novel. So, so that's what I'm working on. I'm working on the next great American novel,
Love it.
uh, and for 2 years now, uh, two friends and I are producing a documentary about the Mason County wine industry, how it got started, from origins, challenges, what the processes are in a vineyard and winery for a year. And we should have that finished up later this year. And hopefully, I mean, the goal is to get it sold to PBS, and we have a local PBS station in Austin that, in their mission statement, promote um, locally produced films about local activities. So
I love it.
we have a chance there, I think. And that's been really wonderful, and it's kept me connected to the wine industry, which has been great.
Great, great. Thank you. I would love it if you would come back on the podcast when that does come out. Maybe we can get all of Team Green together to
Oh, that would be
celebrate your
so
new
much
venture.
fun.
I
Did you
know.
did you do anything special for watching season 2 episodes while they were first airing?
No, I remember just sitting on the couch watching them. I did, however, the night that I got kicked off, I got 4 emails. Well, everyone who was emailing me was on the East Coast, so it wasn't surprising that they were already in the inbox after I watched it, from literary agents hitting me up. So
How fantastic!
and this is one, I know this podcast isn't supposed to be about me, but what I will say is anyone who is doing these shows, don't sell yourself on the show, because that's what publishing houses want to see. They want to see that you can sell yourself. So even though I don't like how I was portrayed, it got me a 4 book deal with HarperCollins, so I'm not about to complain.
Yeah, so you're okay
you
with
know
that.
yeah, thanks for making me look like an asshole. It worked for me.
Yeah,
Awesome,
no,
awesome.
that's exciting, and most of us went back to our prior lives. but you have done something special in using the taste as a jumping off point for a nice, wonderful career for the past 10 years.
Thank you. Well, hopefully
Yeah.
this is the next piece of it, and we'll have you on again several times. It's been so much fun catching up with you, and I really want to get the whole team back together. I think that would be a really
Yeah, I
fun,
think that would be fabulous.
yeah, not just for the podcast, but just to drink some wine and hang out and,
Right. Yeah.
reminisce.
Yes. 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 Shea was always quiet
I
uh,
know.
at the competition, and he spent most of his time, his downtime, playing video games on a little video console because we couldn't have our cell phones.
Right.
Um, but he was, I guess he was looking at this as a competition, and he wasn't. Did were you like early on? I was checking out the competition when we landed and flew in to the airport. They timed our flight so that a large group of us would show up at the same time.
Yeah.
I was like, I walked in and said, "Oh, I wonder what she's doing. I wonder what he does." And it's like, how am I going to outlast that person? So my competitive spirit was really right up there early on.
Oh, I love it. I just didn't want to go home first was all I
Yeah.
cared about.
Yes.
And
Right.
that was all I cared about. And I'm glad I went home third. I was ready to go home. And I definitely talk about that on the other podcast about how we had mentioned, I had a nerve condition. I was not doing great when I left. I don't know if you remember, but I kind of bowed out.
Oh, I remember. I
Yeah,
absolutely remember. I remember on the finale sitting next to you, and you were in serious pain,
it was
and
bad.
it was a challenge for you to show up on the set.
Yeah. Well, I'm in remission now, so I'll take it.
Oh, that's exciting. Oh,
Yeah.
that's very exciting.
Yeah, knock on wood. It's snowing
Yeah.
right now, so my hip hurts a little bit, but otherwise I'm good.
Yeah, well, it's sunny and 96 degrees here.
Oh, well, kiss my ass. I'm just kidding. I love having a podcast where I can curse. I'm warning
Yeah.
everyone, we're not going to watch our P's and Q's here.
That's right. That's right.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, John. It's been so much fun reconnecting with you and chatting with you, and I would love for you to come back and maybe if we have another winemaker on, you can help me interview them. That could be a lot of
Oh,
fun.
that would be exciting. Yeah, I'd love to do that.
All right.
And
Well,
and maybe when the documentary, it's called A Texas Wine Story. The documentary is finished with post production, and hopefully we're ready to air it. We can talk about that as well.
I would love it. I absolutely think that this podcast will be plenty of room to showcase what's happened after the show as well.
Yes,
And I want to do
yes,
that.
yeah. I'm glad you're doing that. I
Awesome.
enjoyed this. Thanks for including me, Audrey.
Oh, thank you for coming. Thank you for being the first person. I was so nervous, but I knew if it was Dawn, it was all going to be okay.
It was gonna be okay. All right.
All right. Thanks so much, Dawn. And
Absolutely.
everyone, please subscribe and give us a 5-star review and give a shout out to Dawn on his social media pages. Dawn, where can they find you again?
It's on Facebook, Don Pullum Winemaker.
Awesome.
I am not using any other social media account now. So they're there, but they're quite dormant.
Gotcha. All right. Well, happy cooking, everyone. And thanks again for listening and or watching the first podcast of Who's Reality Cooking. Bye.
Bye.